Hey everyone and welcome. You're listening to the next episode of Turn Zero Drive Home Edition. This is a solo Marvel Snap podcast where I talk about the latest info you need before you start the first turn of a game while I drive home from work. I'm your host August and let's drive home. So it's the end of the year and we're about to have a patch in a couple days. So before we get into what we're looking ahead for the future Marvel Snap, I thought it'd be kind of neat to look back on the past. So we're gonna take today and we're gonna look back at all of the 12 season pass cards that we've gotten this year, kind of evaluate how they did, where they landed, and what changes happened to them. I see a lot throughout kind of like Discord and Reddit, this kind of idea or the sentiment that the season pass cards are pay to win. Like you got, if you're not buying them, then you're behind everybody else. Or this idea that, if you buy them and then they get nerfed right away, and so they can't really. you're either buying them because they're too good, or you're buying them just as like a rental before they suck soon. So I wanted to kind of look at them and see what's been getting nerfed, what's changed really with them. So the first one from this year, from January, was Iron Patriot. And man, this was a good one. So Iron Patriot came out at the beginning of the year. That's a great way to start off a January season, by the way. This card was a monster when it first came out. So for those who don't know, it was on reveal, add a random 4, 5, or 6 cost card to your hand. If you're winning here after next turn, give it -4 cost. So if you're new to the game, or if you've seen it since it was nerfed, you'll notice that was the main change there. It used to be -4 cost, now it's -3. So before, you were always you could get a free card out of it. This was also during a time when both Negasonic Teenage Warhead and Juggernaut were 3 cost cards. So you could literally just go Iron Patriot into one of those two, and then you would immediately win that lane and usually get something for free or heavily discounted. Now that it's -3 cost, and those other cards have been bumped up to 4 cost themselves, Iron Patriot's mostly used in a quote-unquote fair way. You're looking to try and win the location differently with actual points instead of trying to scam it out. I still see it played quite a bit. It makes its way in V-hand lists. It's very good for that whole hidden information aspect, because your opponent doesn't get to see what card it is that you got. So it's very helpful in adding some little bit of surprise spice into your lists. I really like Iron Patriot. I really like where it's landed. It did get nerfed itself, as we've been talking about, but it took a little bit of time. It wasn't right away. It came out in January and wasn't nerfed until the very end of March. So there was about 2 months there. But despite that, I'm pretty sure I've seen Iron Patriot throughout the entire year. I mean, I've even seen it yesterday. So even with a nerf, it's still a good card. Probably one of the best season passes we've got, definitely this year, but probably at all. Okay, next one was in February. It was arguably either both the best card they've ever made or the biggest mistake they've ever made. Sam Wilson, Captain America. So Sam Wilson, Captain America was, game start, add Cap Shield to a random location, and then ongoing you can move Cap Shield. And on release, Cap Shield was a 1/1 with, this can't be destroyed, and then give Cap +2 power when it moves to Cap's location. So it's a little different now. Captain America now is a 2/2, and the shield itself is a 0/0. So this one was interesting because it came out in February and then was nerfed in March, then nerfed again in April, and then again in May. So we finally settled on where it is. The first change was that the shield dropped from a 1 cost to a 0 cost. This was done so that you couldn't, have the shield as a free way to play Cull Obsidian. Then Cap's power went down to 2/2, And then finally they removed the 1 power off the shield, so you couldn't just move it into hard to play locations and be winning, or automatically start off with priority. This card was and still is bonkers. Like, it had so many more hooks. I remember when it was data mined and we were talking about it, and a lot of people were like, oh, well, okay, so maybe it's like an ongoing card because it makes 2 ongoings. No, gosh, this card did everything. You saw it in every single list. If you weren't playing Captain America Sam Wilson, you were throwing. Nowadays, it's pretty much just for like the Kraven small moving kind of synergies. Sorry. It's not really as ubiquitous as it used to be, which is good, because you don't want a single card dominating. As opposed to that, you really only want to use it when you're trying to take advantage of as much of it as you can. So yeah, it's got the ongoing stuff, but it also has that move stuff. So if you're using it just for the ongoing, you're kind of leaving value on the table. So these days, it's not as big of an oppressive monster as it used to be, but it was definitely a force when it was here. It took, like I said, it took 3 different nerfs to get it down to this level, and then I see people today, this week being like, maybe it's time we can buff Captain America again because it's kind of weak, and it's like, oh boy, that's maybe we can, but we got to be careful with it. I myself personally think that the shield could have 1 power. I think that one was a little too drastic of it, because then the shield kind of does nothing on games where you don't get Sam out. I think it would make a little bit of sense. I understand why it doesn't, but I don't think that part of the card was the part that was a huge problem with it. Especially as we start to see more and more different like game start things, I don't think it's as egregious as it used to be. But we'll see. We'll see what they end up doing, if they end up doing anything. After that, in March, we got the Agamotto 510 game start, shuffle 4 ancient arcana into your deck. So this was the one that gave you the 4 spells, right? The different ways that you can shuffle in those cards. And this card was the first one that we're talking about today that was never nerfed and never buffed. Like, there was no changes ever made to Agamotto. It's been 9 months. He kind of comes in and out of the metagame. I've seen, there was like, when he first came out, everyone was really excited about the Bolts of Balthak or the Winds of Watum. Everyone was kind of like, oh, these cards are too good, but none of them were ever nerfed, and he's not really a force today. He spent a lot of time as part of that 34 card Monty deck, the one that had Agamotto, Arishem, Thanos, like putting every single card you could that added more cards into your deck. But we haven't seen that being around for quite a while still. It's kind of used here and there, but not as much as it used to. Not since it won that Golden Gauntlet tournament. So Arishem himself, would I buff it? I don't think I would. I think he's really good. Maybe, like... No, I was going to say maybe some more power on him, but he's a 5/10. He doesn't need more power. He gets 3 power from one of his spells. Like, power isn't the issue. Neither is cost, because all the spells are cool, and they're cheap enough to play and grab when you draw them. I won't say he's a perfect card, but I don't think he needs to be buffed. Maybe he'll come back again if we get more like spell synergies. More reasons to want to have other cards in your deck. Maybe they make a card that adds like negative things into your deck, so you might as well play more stuff that adds things in to help you from not drawing them. That'd be kind of weird, but I could see that being a thing. But as he is, he's pretty good. Like, we'll see him pop up time and time, but nothing really. So yeah, he hasn't really been changed. After that was April, and then April brought us Captain Carter. So Captain Carter was the first one this year that needed to be buffed. So sometimes, like, we see these season pass cards, and most of the time they're like, oh yeah, very exciting. Like, yeah, I got to get that. Like, that's such a good card. They try to tune higher on the season pass cards for that reason. They want us to be excited for them, and sometimes they miss. So Captain Carter, when it was released, it was a 4/3, and it being a 4 cost was really hard when it needed to be in the front row. I remember the awkwardness of playing it. It was just like, okay, I gotta wait till the end of the game, basically. We're on turn 4, we're playing Carter. Now we only have 2 turns left to try and fill the back. And we need to try and buff Captain Carter as well, because she's only 3 power. It wasn't really working out very well. At the time, the discourse was that if we made her a 3 cost, it would be too insane. I remember it was like, oh, that'd be insane for Surfer, that'd be insane for this and that. It would just be too much. I remember a lot of the thought of a buff might be even 2 costs just to avoid the Surfer line. It's like, what if they made her a 2/2? They reduce her power a little bit, but make her easier to play. And then to the shock of a lot of us, they actually went ahead and did the 3 cost. So right now, as we see Captain Carter, she's a 3/3. Yes, she has that Silver Surfer synergy, and yeah, we see that quite a bit. But I think the main thing that she's got going for her is the Moonstone synergy. So Moonstone had come out before Captain Carter. Moonstone came out in January and was kind of not really doing too much. There was a couple things that were okay with it, but didn't really take off until Captain Carter was reduced to 3 cost. So that happened. So Captain Carter came out in April, and she was buffed like 2 weeks later. A bit more. So she came out on the 1st of April and then was buffed on the 24th. So there were 2 OTAs in a month, so she was buffed to the second one. So basically they needed a little bit of time for data, but not too much to realize that it wasn't working at 4 cost. And then once it was buffed, Moonstone and Captain Carter became a pair. And then ongoing decks got like a lot more better. It's kind of weird to say because we see a lot of ongoing decks today, but earlier in the year, ongoing decks were mostly just kind of the things that you played in the early collection level part of the game before you quote unquote graduated into better decks. Ongoing now has a lot of different tools that keeps it up with all the kind of meta stuff. So, and that's largely because of what Captain Carter and Moonstone can output in terms of power. You get to see that when you're doubling up on these kind of effects, and when you're aggressively putting more power into Captain Carter, you see it come out again with the back row cards. So it turned her into a pretty good card. She went from being a pretty dud of a season pass to something that you need if you like ongoing strategies. She's not the kind of season pass that appears in like multiple decks. You're not getting Captain Carter because you want to be able to plug and play her in a lot of different things, but you need her in something specific. So I kind of like those specific season pass cards in the sense that it's like, okay, this one's it becomes like a good boost to that archetype, but it doesn't help with like the overall appeal of like, oh, I want this to play in a lot of different things. So if you're looking for that, Captain Carter's not your card. Okay, then after April, May was Esme Kaku. Esme Kaku is a 3/4 on reveal. Copy a card from your deck into your hand, set its cost to 3 and its power to 4. This was another one like Agamotto that came out and didn't need a nerf and didn't need a buff. There was no balance changes done to this day. The only time I really see Esme is in Mr. Negative decks. She fell into her niche there because it's like another way to get an easy Mr. Negative. So if you don't have negative in your hand already, when you play Esme on 3, you can pull a 3/4 negative out of your deck, which is better than the 4/1. It also lets you copy out the bigger stuff, the bigger hits like Gore and Iron Man. If you get those into your hand as a 3/4, they're easier to play on the final turn if you don't negative. And even if you do negative, it gives you an extra copy, right? So while people are counting out, they're trying to do what's the math on your turn 6 output, right? It's like, okay, they're looking at it, it's like, okay, you might have an Iron Man, you might have a Taskmaster, you might have a Gore, But if you and they can plan for that. Maybe they have like Rogue and Echo or something weird. Maybe they think they got you, but then you have a second copy of something in another lane that they weren't expecting. It's a backup plan. It's an insurance. That's basically what she's offering. Outside of that, I don't think I've seen her in anything else. I think there was some weird cope to try and play her in V-hand stuff at the very beginning, but that didn't turn out to work. So she's basically been put into this small kind of category of, we want to make sure that the card that we're copying has a really good ability that is hampered by its cost and power. And those are the exact same kind of cards that Mr. Negative likes. Will she get a buff? I don't know, maybe. I don't really know what else they can kind of do. They're kind of hemmed in on this specific ability for her. And then the cost and power, it's a flavor thing, if I'm not mistaken. So Esme Cuckoo is in the lore, she's like a clone. There's like 5 of her, and they're all telepathically linked together. And so what the idea is that, you're making a clone out of another card, and it's still a 3/4 just like she is, right? So without changing her stats, I don't know if you can change the stats that it makes, because once you do that, then you're kind of devoiding the flavor from the card, and then what was the point, right? It's a weird design, so we'll have to see if they ever change anything of it. It's not the most exciting card ever. Especially for a season pass. It's probably one of the weaker ones of the year, to be honest. There's one, at the very least, she has a home that's playable and good, but outside of that, it's very linear and just kind of stuck and not really exciting at all. The opposite of that is this next card, Merlin. So Merlin, 2/3 at the start of each turn, add an incantation to your hand. This guy is great. Hasn't been nerfed, hasn't been buffed. We came out as it was, and one of those cards that's just been great. Merlin, we've seen in a bunch of different stuff. He's kind of settled right now in that zombie horde deck with Werewolf by Night, and you're generating spells to play on top of zombie Scarlet Witch. You're always making new zombie hordes and powering up the horde. But throughout the entire year since it came out, it's had a presence. The ability to have location control is something that I think a lot of newer and returning players kind of underrate, because when you have 3 locations that have random abilities that you can't really prepare for in deck building, you need a way to mitigate some of that randomness as much as you can. Normally you mitigate it with the cube and snapping mechanics. If you can't handle this location, you leave before you snap. If you got a really good location, you pressure your opponent. With the Omniversal Presence spell, you can change it while buffing Merlin, and you can also get that multiple times a game. It's not just the one-off. That, I think, to me, makes it one of the better spells. If we had to think about all 3 of his, he's got that one. He's got Polymorph, which increases it changes one of your cards into usually a better card, and then he's got the I believe it's Otherworldly Presence, the one that shuffles back a card in your deck and gives you +2 energy. They're all good, so we're kind of arguing over what's the best good card, right? I would be more expecting Merlin to get a nerf rather than a buff coming up. I have no idea when. We've been kind of predicting this for a while, and since it's been so long and nothing's happened, the talk around it's kind of fallen off. But I wouldn't be surprised if one day we see like 1 or 2 of his spells increase in cost, because Merlin's kind of becoming that ubiquitous 2 that they don't really like you having. It's this idea that it's like, oh yeah, I'll just I don't know what I'm doing, throw in Merlin. Sometimes that works out better than others, but it's definitely the kind of thing that introduces this kind of 11 card syndrome with deck building, where you're like, okay, I got to start a deck, let's start here. Merlin has been a force in the meta game since its release, and so we're just kind of unsure if they're going to let us keep having that or not. after Merlin, we got the release of Mr. Fantastic First Steps. So here's one that had to be nerfed, and it was nerfed rather quickly. It was nerfed a month later from its release. So for those that don't remember or don't know, Mr. Fantastic First Steps was actually released as a 2 cost. So it was a 2/2 with the ability end of turn, give a card in your hand, -1 cost or +2 power. If you follow my content, like the articles that I do on SnapFan, a series called Snappy Review, where I look at a season pre-release as we have data mined, and then I kind of rate them between 1 to 5 stars. At the time, I famously, and friends from the Discord will not let me forget this, I rated Mr. Fantastic First Steps as a 2 out of 5 because I was looking at so many other cards being so much better and comparing this to Fastos, where you couldn't really control what outcome you got, and boy was I wrong. So this card was insane when it released. You played it in so many decks because as a 2 cost, it was so easy to just, it was a very low opportunity cost. So you play it early in the game and it would just make your cards better. Even if it didn't hit a single cost reduction and just all game, it was adding power to your cards, that added up so much by the end of the game. And even if it wasn't adding any power and was reducing cost, then you were playing things so much quicker than your opponent. It was insane. They settled this by nerfing it by making it a 3/4 as it is now. So they increased its cost so that you couldn't play it as easily, and it shows because it's not really in any decks anymore. It's completely fallen off. I would think that they might be looking at this to buff now. Like, not to bring it back to its insane ubiquity that it was at 2 cost, but I can see them being unhappy with where this landed, because it went from being in basically every deck to being in 0 decks. Like, not even the end of turn decks use this card anymore. So this is the example of a card that, like a season pass card that came out and then a month later was nerfed. And spoilers, this is the only one of the year that happened to. So this idea that, like, oh, they make season pass cards super good and then nerf them just to, like, trick you out of your money, it doesn't really hold up, but it kind of did for this guy. Okay, so the next month after that was Galactus First Steps. Galactus First Steps it has not changed at all. It's a 6/12 that, My Herald is the next card you see I play, and then it's end of turn +2 power if you're winning the Herald's location. It's kind of shown up throughout its lifetime as the big 6, but not like the big ones, just like the kind of medium 6s. Like, it's like, okay, it's a Hulk that gets better, and a Hulk with an ability, right? It's like, when it first came out, I remember it not being very exciting. I remember people being like, oh, okay, so it's not even like, it's not to the insane levels of like Gore or, even like old Blob or anything like that. But it's just like it's not like Red Hulk, but it's a 6 that grows. So people are kind of like, okay, yeah, it's fine. Nowadays, it tends to be the card that if you're looking for a top end, if your deck is interested in a 6 cost, this is kind of where you start. You go, okay, do I want Galactus First Steps? We see it currently in the ramp deck made by Spiles. It's the one that has all the new Electro and War Machine combo. So it includes this as well. You're looking at doing cards like Chamber and Blink, and just having a bunch of different cards in one lane to keep winning and growing in power. This Galactus, and then you can put it on another lane later. That's where we're seeing it today. I don't think we're gonna see any nerfs or buffs to this guy. He's kind of in a good spot where it is. I can't imagine they ever add more power to it, since it's a scaling card on its own, and being a big, Galactus, they're not gonna make it any cheaper. So I think that he's here like this to stay. What's more likely that we'll see happen is that we'll get eventual releases that just kind of outshine him, and we stop playing him because we have better options. Okay, after Galactus is my pick for most disappointing season pass card this year, Viv Vision. So Viv Vision was one of the season passes that had to be buffed within the same month that it came out, which is not really a great sign, right? We've talked about this with Captain Carter. If a season pass card is so unexciting and not good that they have to buff it as soon during the season it's out, it doesn't really mean that the card's doing great, right? If the card is fine, they're not going to buff it right away. They might buff it later, but the fact that they couldn't wait at all means that things weren't good for it. A pre-release of this card was very different from the one that we got in game. So when it was released, and now it says at the start of each turn, give all cards in your hand +1 power if you're winning here, otherwise move to another location. When it was data mined, this was an end of turn card. This said end of turn, give all your cards +1 power, blah blah blah. If you're winning, move it, sort of thing, right? Which is very different, because at the time when this was data mined was when we were running through the whole First Steps deck with Invisible Woman and a turn shenanigans, right? So we were looking forward to this being another card for that deck. And then I think what happened, and I have no idea to know for sure, but I think what happened is they saw that deck take dominance and went, we cannot buff that with this new season pass. So they had to change it to start a turn, and that kind of ruined this card, in my opinion. It makes it so that the problem with the difference between start a turn and end a turn for this card in particular is the clause of otherwise move this to another location. Because if this happens at the start of the turn, like we have it now, it can move into a location where you have only 3 cards and stop you from playing anything there, because it'll fill it up for you. And that I find to be the problem with it. Maybe it's me. I'm pretty. What's the word I would use is like claustrophobic with my playstyle, or I don't like shutting off options early, especially in a game like Marvel Snap when you only have 6 turns. I don't like closing a lane and then being like, this is as much power as I'm ever going to put here. And Viv Vision stops me, hurts that, right? It makes it possible for me to clog myself, and I'm not interested in doing that. I think it's possible, I wouldn't say soon, but I think it's possible they go back to making this an end of turn card. I think they let us try that. I don't know when it would be, but I think that's a potential buff for this guy, and I think that would make Viv Vision so much better. Next up, Zombie Scarlet Witch. Zombie Scarlet Witch was also buffed right away, so we got 2 cards back-to-back, 2 seasons back-to-back that they had to change. They buffed Zombie Scarlet Witch from a 3-2 to a 3-4, and doing so just kind of increased the overall power of the whole Horde package. At the beginning of the month when she was released, we were still missing a couple Horde cards, but even still, it was not a very exciting play pattern. But once they buffed her, and then we also got cards like the Hunger and I believe it was Zombie Sentry, then we were starting to get the power from this card here. Okay, after that, we just had a couple cards that just came out recently. Spider-Punk came as a 3/3. You can move this once, and when you do, you steal 2 power from the highest cost power enemy there. This one was better than I thought it was going to be, so I'm glad that it worked out. I was pretty low on it, but I'm glad to see that it worked out very well. No buffs needed here, no nerfs either. And then today's season pass that we still have is Weapon X. So it's still early for this to be changed. As we've seen through Grand Arena, it's been pretty good. Outside of Grand Arena, I know there's experimentation happening to see if this can still work out. It's a kind of card that I think is going to take longer. It didn't just go right into the whole destroyed deck as we've seen it, so it's going to need a kind of new build. And so I'm excited to see where that goes. So if we look at the whole year, we see 3 cards needed to be nerfed: Iron Patriot, Sam Wilson, Mr. Fantastic. And then 3 need to be buffed: Captain Carter, Viv Vision, and Zombie Scarlet Witch, with 6 cards having no changes. So I think that's pretty interesting. It's not like every season pass they made overpowered, and they didn't make a lot of weak ones either. So it's kind of nice to look at the whole year and see what's going on. For next year, I am hoping that we kind of err more on the side of exciting and more on the side of maybe needing to nerf a couple of them, which sounds crazy, but the reason for that is because when you have a bunch of cards that you don't make any changes to, and they're a bunch of cards that we don't really see played now, they're not as exciting. Like, you don't see much kind of longevity out of them. And the ones that are buffed right away means that they kind of release weak. So the ones that they nerf are the ones that they came out of the gate strong, and the ones that kind of dominated the metagame. And when they dominate, it makes a new deck. It makes the game kind of exciting for a little bit. So we'll have to see what they do coming up. But that would be kind of where I'm hoping we kind of land. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about the Season Pass cards, the ones that we just had, and maybe some coming up that you're looking forward to. And I'll see you guys next week. Thanks.